phones away. Let's get started. Now you got a packet from Joseph. That's going to go with this unit for right now. We'll just put it in the back. You're actually on Monday going to get your tabs for the whole semester, plus your order of contents for everything you've gotten so far, plus several units you're going to get on Monday. Everything for now, but it's probably going to move to another place, and we may move to. Just leave it out right now. Don't put it anywhere. And you should have a band calendar, and you should have gotten a handbook on Wednesday. Did anybody not get one? Okay, that means you didn't get one on your way out. So. All right, we're going to finish with all region today, and we're actually going to try to get through two additional, the units that you have that we've not gone over are pretty small. So we're going to go over, we're going to try to get through all 2.5 units today. All right, so we left off on the prepared etude section, number 17. Come on, guys, you gotta have your stuff turned at the hour, especially those of you that are running in at the hour or a couple minutes after. Okay, so the last thing we talked about on Wednesday, if you're testing in sectionals each week, to make students feel more successful at the start of their next test each week, give them the ending material of the previous week. And as I said, at least you know the first few measures will be good. But I think it's really good, as it says, to link segments together with continuity. And so that should be a part of your plan. Like those Mr. Countryman handouts I gave you, if you're giving your kids the test segments ahead of time, which you should, because that's really for yourself. And you should give those to the kids because your advanced players are going to work ahead, and that makes your sectional job easier because you're going to have more kids that are more prepared on stuff you haven't taught yet. Does that make sense? Because they already know what's coming up. The ones that are not very organized, they're just going to wait until you spoon feed everything to them. And that will be a lot of your students too. All right, number 18. Sign-ups. Okay, this is the other reason why I and people like Mr. Countryman and Miss Adams and, you know, I'm thinking about a lot of the programs I go to that kind of dominate the region bands every year, like it's kind of known everywhere. Oh, so-and-so is going to have more than everybody else. The reason that happens is because the students are required to do listenings. Most people call them listenings. Some people call them pass-offs. I'm not going to say that people do this as much as they did 10, 15 years ago because we're in a different society now and people don't stay as late doing this stuff. We stayed. I mean, we just did. And I think that even if I wasn't single or if I had a family, I still would have done all this. I just would have made it work. The listenings have to be done outside the school day. And you have two ways to do this. You can do them after your sectionals, after school, because you're going to be teaching morning sectionals. You're not going to want to do listenings before that, depending on what time school starts. So if your sectionals after school, for example, are 4 o'clock to 5:15, then you would start your listenings at 5:30. So you have 15 minutes to do whatever, okay? And you go as long as you want to. That's the people that do listenings, that's what they do. So for the fall semester during region time, that just extends your school days. If you're not somebody that wants to do that for whatever reason, then you can choose to have another staff member pull kids out during class and do pass-offs. The only thing about that is you're not getting to hear them. So if you're a head director, and you're not comfortable because maybe your assistant's too young or they don't know enough about the instrument or they don't move fast enough, then you're going to have to make a choice. You're either going to have to hear them or don't do them. Or give your assistant, it's not going to happen, thank you. Give your assistant guidelines as to what to do. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I heard every kid in my band every week. My assistant was really good about helping me because he, well, and she, and he, I had three, they wanted to know, they wanted to get to know my kids, especially the ones that they hadn't started, okay? And they wanted, that's the only time during the school year that they got to work on hard music. Now think about that. When you're doing pass-offs with kids on region music, that's going to be harder than any music you do with your band all year. So you should feel happy about that because that's going to stimulate your mind more and it's going to allow you to put into play the things that we've been working on the past week in here. And it makes you feel a sense of accomplishment because guess what? If I'm an assistant and I've pulled Christy out and I've heard her every week on her music and she makes it, I'm taking credit for that as much as the head director, in my mind anyway. Even though she might be in the head director's band, you're a part of that. And you're more motivated because you're getting to do harder things with kids that play better than the ones that are in your band. So there's positive and there's negative things to that. I really don't say negative because unless you think that staying longer at school is a negative thing, but you know, we're doing this for the kids. We know we don't do this for the money. Now there are two scenarios if you're an assistant. Don't be upset if a head director says, Michael, I don't want you teaching sectionals to your band until region is over, and I want you to hear my brass every week and I'll do the woodwinds. Because that happens in a lot of places. So that means you're not doing sectionals, so that means Michael's getting to school whenever you're required, let's say at 7:15, and he's doing listenings from 7:15 to 8:30 when the bell rings for first period or whatever. And then he does listenings after school. Or if I want Michael doing sectionals with his band, because guess what? His band's a feeder program to mine. I want those kids acclimated to doing sectionals all year. I'm going to ask him if he minds doing listenings outside of the sectional perimeters like I am. That makes sense? That means both of our days are longer. So I was lucky, my three assistants, they wanted to do their own sectionals and they did listings for me as well. We did not pull kids out. I don't like kids being pulled out of class. Lessons, yes, but like I go to schools where directors get really frustrated, like if it's Wednesday and that's big lesson day and there's kids getting up and down all period long. Sometimes you have no choice, and if you have kids that have problems taking lessons after school because of athletics or whatever, you're going to love to have teachers there during the day. So those are the two scenarios. Or you're just cut out. I shouldn't say that. The head director does all their own listings, and you're doing your sectionals. What you should not allow yourself to fall into the trap of being an assistant and not doing sectionals and not contributing to the region curriculum. Meaning, you're blowing into school, you teach your classes, and you blow out after school. Because if I was a head director, I would not be okay with that. So, if they don't say anything, you should offer. Now, if you're really smart, like if Michael's my assistant, and I know he went to a university maybe where blank was not taught very well, he's going to hear all my woodwinds. And I, being a woodwind player, pretend I'm going to hear all the brass. Because then he's getting to work with kids he didn't start, you see? So you're getting to know all those kids. The easiest thing is, well, Michael, you hear all the brass and I hear the woodwinds. Well, that's fine too. Or I might say, you can do my horns, but I want you to do the flutes and the oboes and the bassoons and the saxophones, and I'll do the clarinets and all the rest of the brass. You see? So there's a lot of different scenarios, but please do not feel put upon when you're asked to contribute and to help. Yes, it extends your school day, but you're learning a lot. You're getting to put into play all the things we're talking about. You may teach the head director techniques that they didn't know. They didn't go to school here. They're not going to learn this stuff, as with most things that you learn here. Okay. As the handout says, realistically, one director cannot hear every single student in a top band. Realistically. But if you are okay staying until 7 o'clock every night, you can. If your sectionals go until 5 and you hear kids from 5 to 7 every night, that's 10 kids a day. So it's possible. But as long as I stayed, I didn't want to stay longer than that, so the assistant helped. So what we did was, well, when I wasn't as smart, I did the brass and the assistants did the woodwinds, and then when I got really smart, I flipped that. And then the percussion got to sign up with whomever they wanted. If you have a percussion specialist, don't assume they're going to be around to do listenings, because they're going to be at another campus, or they're going to be doing marching band. Because you're not going to have your own percussion specialist just at a middle school. And then with high school, that's hard. I mean, I'm sure you all have different stories about that. You've got to get kids, you have to hold them accountable when they're in marching band too. You're not going to have any kids that make region. And you know what? Some of the best programs in the state, high school-wise, are the ones that are dominating the region bands and go to All-State. I mean, think about it. And a lot of you came from programs like that. Clinton, you did. Mr. Hull was not going to have other schools beating him. He already had enough competition within the district. Richland, and I mean, those are the schools that had the most amount of kids in it. That's true in the back to the 90s, because the Colony was always in competition. We beat Halton back then, though. That's why Mr. Bergen always. They wish that my middle school was feeding Halton. That's everybody's dream was back in the day. But a lot of you came from programs where, how many of you came from a high school where you know that y'all dominated the region band? Anybody? Where'd you go? Well, yeah, I'm sure. Anybody else? Now, if you don't hear kids play their music off, don't expect that they're going to make it. I mean, I'm not being negative, I'm just being realistic. The reason I didn't make All-State myself, I should have been at least a 2-year All-Stater. Never did a band director ever hear my region music, all the way through my band experience. And I made it every year based on my own work and private teacher, which was kind of a revolving door. Like, one of my lesson teachers died my 11th grade year. It was very sad, and they had a hard time finding a teacher to replace him, and he was like my age. It was very sudden. But we didn't have people hear our music. It wasn't until I started teaching and I got around smarter people that I started doing this listening thing. And it helped the students because they were able to go into high school and be successful too. For the best results, they've got to be 15 to 20 minutes. You can't get anything done in 5 to 10 minutes. Let me say something else about listenings, because you're going to hear me talk about this a couple more times this semester. Most really strong programs do listenings, region, solos, and UIL. I did not do UIL listenings. And you're thinking, really? You did high school music, which I've told you many times. Our sectionals were an hour and a half long, so I didn't need to do listenings. We started school at 9, like 8:55 in Louisville. So my sectionals were 7:15 to 8:45. It was great. So after school sectionals were like 4:15 to 5:30 or 5:45. So I didn't need to do them because I had extra time. There was not ever a problem with that. But when we get into our S&E unit, a lot of people do listening, some people don't. Remember, those ratings are a reflection of you. And if a judge writes down, you know, notes and rhythms not worked out, poor performance, well, that's on you because they shouldn't have gone because you didn't hear them. Had you heard them, you maybe would have said, I don't think we're ready to go this year. Same thing with this. Most people do listening simply to tell kids whether they can go or not. And the higher your standards are, the more kids will work. But you don't want to send, for example, there are schools I go to where, okay, like Curtis's school, where he is now. The flutes in his band are just not good because he had an assistant that was ill a lot last year. and is not there this year. And the beginners just did not learn what they needed to learn. So he's not doing region music in their sectionals at all. They're doing fundamentals and other stuff to make them better. Next year, different story. So you'll have the choice to do that too. Not everybody, you don't have to do the music in the sectionals. That should be your goal if you're a head director. Many of you are going to have your own second band kids who are going to the sectionals that the region music's taught. So you'll be involved in that as well. At my school, nobody in the second band did region music unless it was like an oboe or bassoon player that really should be in the first band. And we talked about that. Let those kids do it. But okay, like my schools in San Antonio, the two schools that were my demo band this summer, they have like 10, 15 kids in the second bands that make region band every year. And that's over kids at other schools in the top bands because the standards are just higher. And so like whatever we do in the first band, we do in the second band too, in terms of region stuff. And they make it. And that's cool. That's why those programs are so good. That's why Reagan and Johnson are so good. Because me, along with those middle school directors, have established that culture. And so those kids get into high school and they have no problems doing anything. The proof is in the marching band all the way through. I mean, that's statewide, everybody knows that. And it's because they have the middle school thing going on so strong there. That's not the only place I go to. There's lots of schools I go to where there's a handful, if not more, of second band kids. But they're going to the head director's sectional, or they're going to two. Their band and the region music. Well, how cool are those second band kids? They're getting 2 sectionals a week. And that's a very good thing. Okay, what are some experiences that some of you have? How many of you remember doing listenings in middle school for region stuff? Like you had to play off your music for somebody.
Middle school?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Matt, you did, because I was mentoring your director.
Well, this is Miss Bachelor.
I was helping her at the time. Not a lot, though. And she gets a lot of kids in, even now. How many of you remember being heard individually in high school, outside of band class? How many of you never had listenings on region stuff? So, did y'all make it based on your own talent?
Yeah.
But you were taking lessons? No. So you made region band on your own. That's cool. When one of you made it, did the other one make it too?
Well, junior year made it, and then I didn't try it.
Okay.
And then senior year I didn't.
So Marty, with you, your dad never heard you play?
Well, yeah, he did. I mean, but it wasn't. We didn't have a formal establishment of everyone doing pass-offs.
So you had the advantage because he was your dad.
Well,
And
there's
you-
that, and the
Lesson
rest of the staff
teacher.
were my friends, so they would play.
Okay. Michael?
Ours were voluntary. They would put us on a sheet, and if you wanted to have them listen.
Okay, and yes, that's another thing is doing a voluntary list, and that's, I think, coming up. Or we already talked about that. Didn't we? Yeah, when we were over here, about devoting an afternoon to your star players that just want to play for you, that are really competitive. No help? Did you ever make it? Region man?
Yeah.
On your own? Were you in lessons? So that's good. No, that's cool. If I was, and I still harbor a little bit of ill feelings, but I have to be careful because all of my directors have passed, but none of them ever heard us play. We were so smart, and we had great instruments, like brand of instruments. It was a gold mine that nobody acted on. And so when I went to school, the high school bands were very, they were average. And then, there were other schools in the area that would just beat us in everything. And that's because we weren't held to the same standards that the other schools were being held to. Okay, so going on in the handout, really the time is 30 minutes because you want them to get there early and go to a practice room and warm up. So when they come into your office or wherever, they're already warmed up. They sit down and you have them start playing scales. You dive right in to the music. You should not be sitting there when you're giving your time and the kids are sitting there doing Remingtons and long tones and all that. That should already be done. So that has to be factored in. You have to train your kids about getting there early. Okay? If you're doing required, this is not on the handout, that, like a sectional, is curricular, so it's a grade. It's a weekly grade, and that is your decision. Nobody makes that decision except you. If the listenings are required and there's a sign-up list, you are allowed to give them a grade. So see, my kids had sectional, listening, and a buddy session, which we talked about last semester. And the buddy sessions, like if Ashley is a 12th grader and Lauren is a 9th grader in my band at the high school, I'm going to pair them up and they're going to work on region stuff too. Ashley may be able to teach Lauren the 3rd octave of a scale that nobody taught her in middle school. Or practice uneven rhythms. You remember that form? So my kids had to do 3 things. It was intense, but they weren't involved in all the activities that your kids are. It's just it's a different time now. And I probably couldn't have gotten away with doing that if I was teaching now. But I would be doing the required listening somehow, in addition to sectionals. Because there's too many people that are competitive that you have to kind of keep up with the Joneses.
Could you do recordings as well?
As long as you'll discipline yourself and listen to them, but that means you have to write stuff down, you have to pass it out, you have to do all that. See, I like doing it all live.
Well, I mean, preferably yes, but if time to...
Yes, but just don't like take the recordings and never give them back to the kids, because then they're going to stop doing them, because they know that you're not listening to them. And that means there has to be quick turnaround. That's the thing. If it's this is test number 1 and you're 3 weeks later and you haven't turned back test 1, that defeats the purpose of doing that. So, but yes, you should probably write that down. That's an option. Or for kids who their live test is horrible and they have to do a makeup test because it's not passed. You said you have before next week's sectional to send this to me in a recording. Okay, number 19, we already talked about that poster that I held up. Do some sort of a chart with stickers or the Olympic style thing. That's a really great thing to do. Okay, number 20. Now everybody's doing fall concerts these days, and I love that. Halloween concerts, fall concerts. Instead of doing 4 pieces with your top band, why don't you do 2 and get 10 kids to volunteer to play their region music at the concert? I did that every year. And you're educating the parents what this region stuff is. And you can tell the parents, these are the things that the kids should be working on at home. These scales, if you're not hearing your child play this at home, they are not practicing correctly. If all you hear is the music that we play at the football games, and you'll have people chuckle in the audience, you're educating them. If they're not a band person, they have no idea what region music is. And you can say, this is what I have been teaching your children in sectionals since the 2nd week of school. And the parents are like, oh, you're educating your parents as well as getting your kids to go through the live audition process in front of a group of people. Now what you would do on that, you can either jot this down, you either select the students, or I got to the point where I had so many kids that wanted to play, I just did a sign-up sheet. But you have to cut it off, like you can't have 12 kids playing because the concert's going to take way too long. I would do a sign-up sheet and I'd do like 8 students, and it was first come, first serve. And they would play and I would take them through the audition process. So let's say that Marty was one of my volunteers. So I would tell the parents what I was doing. Marty, B flat scale, 2 octaves, perform, perform, D flat scale, perform, perform, chromatic scale, perform, perform. Okay, and your slow etude from here to here, perform, fast etude from here to here. That would take probably 3 to 4 minutes a kid. And it's not necessary to give information, save that for the school day when the parents aren't there, because they don't understand any of that stuff anyway. And so you take as many kids as you can. All schools that I help on a regular basis, this is what they're not now doing in their fall concerts. They're just trimming down the music, which is good because the less music that you're playing at the concert, the more time you can focus on the region music. Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have the sign-up sheet process and you have a student or a few that you know you've listened to them and they're just not quite ready, would you tell them in private, you know, listen, Billy or Susie, I don't think this would be a good, just so they don't embarrass themselves.
Yeah,
if they're
we're
not
gonna,
prepared.
I think we're getting to that. Yeah. Yeah, you would. Okay, number 21. There are a lot of districts here in Houston. I know that Alvin does this, and I think there are a couple clusters in Fort Bend that get together and do this. Sci-Fair does this, where you have mock auditions with kids in other schools nearby. That's really cool because then they get all their nerves out of their system. And it motivates them because they're like, oh, all those kids at that school play better than I do. I don't like that. And they'll go home and practice more. Whatever it takes. But that means you have to have judges, and you may have to hire out for that. I didn't do mock auditions, quite frankly, because the other middle schools in the cluster it just would not have been, it would have been boring for my kids. So instead, I just pushed and pushed and pushed them through the listenings and the sectionals. If you know your school is at a much different level than the other ones, I would not go to that time and expense. I would just keep on in your own plan. But if it's something that can be a positive experience, that's great. Okay, number 22. Some people that don't want their fall concerts to involve region music, they do a separate recital night, and they have like 15, 20 kids signed up, and that's what the concert is. You can either require all of your students to go and support their friends, and I would do that because you want to educate all the parents, not just 15 kids' parents. Okay, 23. This is a problem in a lot of schools in Houston, and this is like the young private lesson teacher thing. I would not be, no, don't be offended if you were doing this when you were a freshman or sophomore. I would not be hiring young college students to do finishing touches or even in the learning process master classes because they do not know how to do all the stuff that you have learned this past week. They know how to play the music. They don't know how to teach it unless they're in their upper level courses with their professors. So be careful on that. The most amount of complaints I get, because you know I've been here a long time and I get phone calls or people see me in person, is that the classroom management is bad. Well, yeah, because they haven't had their classes to know how to get kids to sit right and not move around and not talk out because it's a new person. So keep all those things in mind. Find band directors. They're the ones that are going to be able to control those kids better. If you do this, I'm going to discourage you. Like Sci-Fair does these on, I don't know how they do it. I would hate that Friday. They do them on Fridays after school. And then it turns into like a go to the gym and they have all the equipment set up for like all that stuff. What is that called where kids jump around in that thing? They have all that stuff set up. Like people the kids pay to do that. So it's like a fundraiser. So that's a common thing. I'm just not a fan of kids doing activities in other parts of school because I would just be afraid that there would be damage done to something and then your principal would get upset with you. So I like those, but I would prefer that you do them not on a Friday. That is a long day. Or I would encourage you to do them on Saturdays. That's what a lot of smart people do, is on Saturdays when the kids are more sleepy, like a 9 o'clock or 9:30 start time. And then you could do maybe an activity afterwards, like a pizza party. That's the easiest thing to do. But the ones that do them on Friday, they're tired, it's after school, it's Friday, they do a master class for 2 hours, they eat pizza, and then they run around like Indians for 3 hours. Okay. Okay, read number 24 to yourself. Okay, regarding scales, when kids play, and this is what I'm doing every day in schools. I've heard so many scales this week. That's good, because this is a part of everybody's curriculum, as it should be in a top group. With scales, everybody else should be made to position, because unless it's a extraordinarily fast tempo, like a kid says, 150. Well, in a middle school band, your 7th graders are not going to keep up with that. So then they would just kind of just sit there. But everybody that can keep up with the tempos needs to position. Chromatic scale, same thing. Now in the lyrical etudes, everybody in the class should be positioning. Everybody. Regarding the technical etudes, that depends on how fast your kids have practiced what their own plan is. Thus, the handout says, to the best of their ability. You don't want younger kids or like 9th graders that are positioning at tempos way faster than they have practice. So be mindful of that as you do this. When you give information and you're making, like if I have Lauren playing and I have Lauren marking down, then Ashley and Christy need to be doing the same thing in their music, because they may not be playing today, but what I'm saying to Lauren is probably applicable to the whole section. You need to establish that culture. I have to get on to a lot of directors who do not make kids stay engaged if they're not performing. They're sitting in the back of their chair, they're looking around the room. Hello, they need to be positioning. Every time they position, they get better. And if I'm telling Lauren to do a breath mark in a different place, that is wasting time if the other clarinet players are not making that same marking. Or if a clinician comes in and say, Lauren, I would like you to breathe here instead. Can you erase that marking? If it works, everybody else in the section needs to be making the same mark. Okay? All right, now this is something that you as a teacher should be doing. When you're doing listenings or pass-offs or whatever, use a pen. Because then you know what your markings that you made are. So here's an example. Sean comes in and she is doing really immature breath marks. Okay, and I'm going to draw arrows and new breath marks, and then when I hear her again next week, if she's doing the same things wrong, I will know, okay, now last week we talked about this and we fixed this and you still are doing it the other way. And then the next time you may do a different color, but at least use a different color, don't use a pencil. Then you know that those are teacher markings. If you have staff members, make them do the same thing. Use a pen or a different color or color pencil that erases. So the student markings are different than the director markings. Okay, number 25, test notes. We showed that with Caitlin. The test notes are not effective if you let kids collapse their embouchures. Okay? And I think that test notes should be done even with high school kids. If it's round robin and they are the 12th of 12 kids in a set, they need to be able to play a test note. There's no region that I know that does not allow test notes. And most regions, after blank kids, everybody gets to play for a while. But again, if it's the 12th of 12 kids before the playing break, they need to be able to play so they get that read going, or just, yeah, so that's, when you test kids, they should be doing test notes all the time, not just on the day of the audition. Okay, 26. Getting kids to practice in weird places is important because you don't know where you probably already know where the cuts are. It's going to be pretty obvious, but don't have kids just always practice starting at the beginning. Their cut may be at the beginning, it may not. 27. Don't blow off your percussionists. They need to be participating in all this stuff in class. You should try really hard within a 2 or 3 day period to hear somebody doing something on the snare, something doing on the timpani, and somebody doing something on the mallets. Or they're going to be back there messing around, twirling sticks and leaning against the wall and all the things that percussionists are very bad about doing in schools. If you have a specialist, they can teach the majority of the sectionals if that's what they're paid to do. But you know what? Once in a while, you need to be sitting in that sectional too to see how that percussion specialist is getting those percussionists at the level that they're at. Okay, 28, read that to yourself. $29. Okay, and after you've read that, I want you to go to this letter that looks like a parent that's going home to parents about region trials. It looks like this. Dear Griffin Symphonic Band selected concert band students.
So before or after?
I don't know. I think it's before the math. Okay, so on this, and I don't want to skip all this because this is just too important. Monday's going to be the day where we go through like 3 units in one day, I promise. We're not, but I don't want to glaze over some of this. All right, this is an example of a letter that you would give your parents for region tryouts. Start the letter with something positive, and notice that I did a shout out to the kids who made the district group. Okay? Then the second paragraph, you're talking about what's happening next, which is region. Okay, now back to what Caitlin said earlier, look at the second sentence. We are determining whether students have passed off their music as we are hearing each student individually perform their music this week. If we feel like a student has continued to work hard, if you had an all-district tryout, you may not. And will have a positive audition experience because their music is at a high level, they will be allowed to audition. So that's telling parents that if their pass-offs are not up to snuff, you're not letting them go. And that is your prerogative. The pass-off list is posted in the band hall, and I gave kids until 5:30 the night before. Boy, that sure lights the fire. And I loved seeing a lot of kids on Fridays because that showed me how much they really wanted to go.
So if a student is in the top band and,
Not up to snuff,
yeah,
they don't go.
okay, and are they just like not in the top band anymore because it's
No.
required? No.
Well, it's required, but they've gone through the process. You're just not letting them go to the tryouts. Remember that. No, don't kick them out. If it's a 7th grader that just has bad hand position, that hasn't clicked yet, you don't want them to sit there and fall all over themselves because they're going to hear kids from other schools and they're going to want to quit. That could be a really negative thing. I hope none of you were in situations like that. And that money is it's not in the handout. That entry fee, if they paid it, is non-refundable. So you probably should add that to your letters. Because you will have already turned in a check to your region chairman for all the kids' entry fees. You're probably going to be paying for, if your band has 60 kids in it, you're probably going to be paying for 60 kids 2 months ago. And you're not going to be able to get cash, and that just doesn't happen. They're non-refundable. It's like solo and ensemble fees in most places. Okay, in the 3rd paragraph, see, I was really smart because I had lots of people I had to compete with, the same people that I'm competing with now for consultant work, but we all have plenty of work, thank goodness. We did a warm-up in the band hall before the buses left. We sight read. We went through all of our scales before we even got on the bus. So at least I knew the kids had warmed up with me correctly, because when they get to the school and they go to the cafeteria, I hated walking through that. War zone. I just had to like cover my ears and go and not look at anything. Because I see kids playing wrong and sitting wrong and standing wrong and playing pep rally music. Kids from other schools, that is. Now, notice how I kind of nicely zapped the parents that for kids that were late at district tryouts the past weekend. Read that italicized, about adding stress. You're having to send somebody to the phone to call parents in the morning. Because if you take a bus, you're going to be leaving about the same time. Unless you make kids go on their own, I would never do that. Because that is too easy for there to be DNAs. And we'll talk about that on solo and ensemble. I want to make sure all the kids are there. So there's not quartets that are automatically trios. And a duet that ends up being a solo. Then you know, that at least you can get a parent to call, Michael should already be here. Can you take him to the school? We cannot wait on him, but we need him. And you're putting that on the parents. Early bus, late bus, I mean, we had 1,700 kids trying out, so there were rooms that went really late, and there were rooms that were done by noon. So if you're smart, get an early bus to go home with some parents, so you don't have kids messing around in the school when they need to go home. Because you're not going to be able to police them, because you're going to be judging. Okay? With cell phones, you know, you may want to do one-way transportation, and because cell phones are so popular now with even middle school kids, their parents come pick them up. You can't babysit them on this day. You're going to be judging. Okay? Okay, look at the next paragraph. That needs to be kind of a stock part of all of your letters, including bus trips. And I think I told you last semester that the high school director got in a lot of trouble on a marching band trip when he allowed a kid to go home with the wrong parent that weekend. That was a big, 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 big debacle. All of those things need to be done in writing. And if you have split custody situations, you need to know what's going on. Okay, then look at the slip. See, they got a grade. Every slip that you do, give them a grade. Easy 100s. And then you know that the parents know what's going on. Okay, so Friday, the day before, I looked at my roster. There's 10 kids that I don't have slips. Well, guess what? Those are probably going to be the DNAs tomorrow unless you call their parents. Oh, Mr. Benzer, I'm so sorry. I don't even know what letter you're talking about. And then the kid's gonna get in trouble at home. Yay! And then you got one more kid that's gonna be on your bus tomorrow. Don't assume that those kids are gonna show up. The parents probably don't even know about it. Okay, look at the next page. If the parents are ever involved in picking kids up, like it's a one-way bus, give them a clear map. Even though y'all do GPS, not all parents are savvy enough and do that. I don't do that. Next page. When the region chairman sends out all the room assignments and stuff, if you're in a region that has a lot of kids, like over 1,000, you need to do your own handouts. This is very easy to do so the kids know where to go. And notice at the bottom, we had barrier 1, barrier 2. If they didn't pass barrier 1, they went home. They were done, unfortunately. That they had to be in their room to receive an audition time between 8 and 8:45. You're all going to have different procedures on that. But explain and teach this to your kids so they know. Next page. So kids know exactly what's going to happen in the room. See, in our region, barrier 1, they had to play 2 major scales, chromatic scale, and we made them do like the hardest thing of both etudes. And if they did not get a pass voucher, they're done. And if they got a pass voucher, then they went into another room. And again, you'll all have different procedures about this. And then in barrier 2, no scales, because the cream has already risen to the top. Now we got to find out who actually makes it and who in their chair order. So they did cut, cut, and sight reading. Okay? And that is a good stopping point for today. Yeah. Did everybody get the calendar and the handbook? Okay, yes, Maureen.
Is all district, like...
Some people call it all district or all city.
Okay, is that...
Not everybody does that.
Is that the same music?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a pre-audition. See, that's another, we had to do that because there were 1,800 kids trying out. So a lot of kids, their goal was to make all district because they weren't going to make all regions. So it's a way to get more kids getting an accolade.
Okay.
So where do you want?
Just put it in the back. Put those extra sheets I gave you today just in the back of this unit for now.
We did all state a little differently. It was, once all state was over, and they pulled the highest ranking from all the schools and created the all city band. Like,
At the high school level?
and the municipal level.
Huh.
So they just kind of waited.
They didn't do it before?
They just did it as a fun thing that you get to, like, as a reward at the end.
It's best to do it before, because then kids that are not prepared and they hear other kids that are way better than they are, they'll go and practice more. That may put them over the edge. They may make all regions because they don't want to be beat.
Right. These are more as a reward, like you got to get out of school for 2 days.
Sure.
You can tell.
This year, Johan May is going to be their clinician. It was always fun stuff.